Have you ever stopped to think that the same principles, the ones used by the inventors of cinema way back in the 19th century, could actually be the key to understanding human evolution today? I know, it sounds like a bit of a stretch, right? But it's at the heart of this incredible story of innovation that was born out of sheer necessity.
So let's just get right to the big question. Can a technique from the actual dawn of film really make a difference in our super modern digital world? Well, as one professor found out, the answer is a big, resounding yes.
Okay, so the story starts in a place we all remember, maybe a little too well. 2020. The pandemic hit and boom, education everywhere was suddenly forced online. Our screens became our classrooms. And, this created a huge problem for certain subjects.
So yeah, it was a massive challenge for sure, but it was also one of those moments that just sparked this incredible wave of creativity. And out of that whole crisis came this really elegant solution, one with roots deep, deep in the past. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. How on earth do you teach something like evolutionary biology, a subject that is all about physical change, about adaptation, about the human body, when you're separated by a screen? How do you get students to actually feel the material and not just, memorize a bunch of facts? Well, the answer, it turns out, came from this beautifully simple, century-old filmmaking technique, the Minuto Lumière, or in English, the Lumière Minute. So this is a method that's directly inspired by the very first moving pictures ever created. We're talking about the pioneers of cinema, the Lumière Brothers. This is filmmaking in its absolute purest form. All right, let's break this down because the real genius here is in the rules, the constraints. The rules are super strict. First, your film has to be exactly 1 minute long. Second, the camera cannot move at all. It's one single fixed shot. Third, there is absolutely zero editing. No cuts, no fancy effects, no post-production, nothing. And finally, it's preferably silent. Sounds simple, right? But man, is it challenging. And that's exactly what makes it so perfect for a modern classroom. The beauty of it is that anyone with a smartphone can do it. You don't need expensive gear, you don't need fancy editing software. All that creative energy, instead of going into post-production, it goes into the planning, into figuring out what story you're going to tell within that one single unblinking frame. The focus isn't on special effects at all, but on the careful choreography of what you see, and just as importantly, what you don't. So the big question is, how exactly did this 19th century technique get used in a 21st century university biology course? Okay, this is where it gets really cool. This is the core of the whole experiment, which is based on the work of Professor Luiz Gustavo da Conceição Galego. He basically challenged his biology students at Brazil's Federal University of Triângulo Mineiro to create their own Minuto Lumière films, with each one explaining a key concept in human evolution. And we're talking about huge ideas here. Things like bipedalism, the moment our ancestors first stood on 2 feet, the development of the opposable thumb, the dawn of agriculture, the creation of the very first tools. I mean, all of these massive, massive evolutionary leaps somehow had to be condensed into a single, unedited 60-second shot. And here you can see what they actually created. These are screenshots from their films. Just look at the focus on hands, on these simple, deliberate actions. By using these really tight close-up shots, they give their films this almost scientific seriousness vibe, kind of like a documentary. It was a brilliant way to bring these huge epic concepts down to a really personal, tangible scale. And this, right here, is where the real magic happened. To explain something like the importance of the opposable thumb, students filmed their own hands picking things up, manipulating objects. To show tool use, they became the actors in their own little scientific drama. And all of a sudden, evolution wasn't some abstract chapter in a textbook anymore. It was a living, breathing story written in their own muscles and bones. So what happened was this project created this really profound shift in the whole learning process. It was way more than just a creative assignment. It completely changed the role of the student. Think about it like this. In a traditional class, especially online, it's so easy to just be a passive spectator, right? You just sit there and absorb information. But the Minuto Lumière, well, it forces you to become an active author. To make that 1-minute film, you have to actually do, feel, and appreciate the knowledge. You literally have to embody it. And the technology itself, that simple camera on their phone, it was totally transformed. It stopped being just a device for consumption, for passively watching videos. Instead, it became a tool for creating understanding, an instrument for authorship, for autonomy, that they used to build their own knowledge from the ground up. And this might be the deepest impact of all. By directing, by starring in their own little films, the students were no longer just passive observers of evolution. They started to see themselves as part of that story, as protagonists in this incredible, ongoing natural process. So what this whole experience proves is that even the simplest tools, when you apply them creatively, can build this incredibly powerful connection to knowledge. And that kind of brings us to a final thought for you. So I want you to really think about this. What complex idea from your job, from your studies, from a hobby you're passionate about, could you explain in a single 60-second uncut shot? What would you choose to put inside that frame to make someone really, truly get it? Because at the end of the day, what this experiment really shows is that the powerful constraints of the Lumière minute, they force a kind of clarity and creativity that can be totally transformative. It really proves that sometimes a single uncut minute can reveal so much more than hours and hours of just reading about something.